Hey everybody, it's Ryan at the Max Afterburner channel. Today we're going to be breaking down the EA-18 Growler that plunged into the San Diego Bay. We'll be watching the footage here in a second, and then I'll be giving you my perspective from an F-15E combat fighter pilot, F-16 Thunderbird Fighter pilot, and current commercial pilot. I'll talk to you about what I think possibly happened, and then we'll talk about the video itself. We'll talk about the EA-18 Growler, what it does, what was it doing down there, and at the end of the day, this is an unofficial review. Can't drive that home enough. This is just you and me hanging out in my man cave, and we are discussing aviation. All things fighter jets, commercial aviation, that's what we do here. There'll be an official investigation. Won't be as fun as this conversation, I can guarantee it. This is for entertainment purposes only. Keep that in mind as we dive in to the EA-18 plunging. Here we go. Boom! Look at that, it like hit the buoy. I can have a little fun with this because the pilot and the Wizzo got out and they survived, it sounds like, without any major injuries. So boom, look at that shack. They're almost hitting that second buoy in there. And it looks like, yep, there goes the buoy up. Man, they're going to get some credit from their bros for this one, for hitting that buoy. I mean, you could eject out of 1,000 aircraft and you might not hit the buoy as good as they hit it right here. That's wild. Man, this thing's coming in hot. My guess is probably somewhere around 600 miles an hour or so. And then as I pause it right there, you can see the landing gear are down. So that gives us a little bit of a clue, right? So this thing's coming into land, landing gear are coming down, it's going into the landing configuration, and some sort of a malfunction is gonna happen that's gonna cue them to eject out of the aircraft. So that's good for us to know. And it's just so ideal that this thing went into the bay and didn't go into any populated areas. And we'll get into a few reasons of why that may have happened here in a second. Boom! I just love seeing that buoy just go boom, boom! I mean, you gotta give these guys credit for hitting that buoy. Man, that thing is just coming in so hot, guys. Okay, here's another angle. Wow, you can just see, it looks like that video is actually slowed down. I will watch it one more time. Yeah, that's slowed down. You see the guy walking slow at the bottom. So it's slowed down and the jet is going that fast. That's why I'm saying I think they must have ejected relatively high as they're coming in. Probably the top of the traffic pattern, which could be as high as somewhere around 2,500 feet to 3,000 feet. Or perhaps they had lost both engines and they're trying to do a flame out. Now, doing a flame out without an EPU, an emergency power unit, is what you would have in a single engine aircraft. In a twin engine aircraft, there's no EPU. There's just some batteries and some auxiliary functions to run those flight control systems, but you are basically gonna lose all control of the jet if you lose both engines. That's just the nature of the beast in a twin engine situation. However, you know, I've flown fighter jets with twin engines, fighter jets with single engines. I would much rather have the second engine, to be honest with you guys, a lot of the time, because you've got a full backup with thrust. If you have a single engine aircraft like an F-16, now you have that EPU, which fires hydrazine, and it shoots that essentially toxic radioactive, I don't know about radioactive, but toxic chemical that is then going to drive the flight control systems. So if for some reason they had a single engine failure, which then they're going and they're being precautious, they're keeping their altitude high as they're coming in, and then they have the dual engine failure. Hey, there's nothing left. We did everything we could. Now we got to send this thing back to the taxpayers. Boom, put yourself in position, call for it, and then eject out of the aircraft. So that could be the situation here. That thing coming in so hot like that just tells me that it was up relatively high in the traffic pattern with the gear down. They're coming in to land, and then that's going to happen. I will say, so with the fact of this thing going into the bay, if that's planning on the pilot's parts, it certainly could have been. If they're working some sort of an issue, what we're told as aviators and fighter jets is to put yourself in a position that, hey, if you do a controllability check, which is when you slow down and you get really slow. So if you're single engine, you've had some sort of battle damage or something like that, maybe something's going wrong with your aircraft, you've noticed it, your buddy has checked you out and said, hey, yeah, you got some panels missing or something like that. You put yourself in a position where if you have to punch out of the jet, which is fighter pilot slang for ejecting, that the jet's going to go into an unpopulated area. So in this case, going into the bay, perfect, avoiding that civilian population. At Nellis Air Force Base, where I did a lot of my flying, did red flags and things like that, the controlled bailout area was out over a dry lake to the north of Las Vegas. Now there's a ton of solar panels there, so you got to avoid the solar panels. But if you're doing some sort of controllability check, you've lost an engine, or you're just not sure of the jet's ability to come in and land normally, then what you're going to do is you're going to do your checks and your tests out over that dry lake bed. And I don't know if this is the procedure, but I would assume the Navy, being the smart organization that they are, that this likely happened. If they were doing the controllability check, then they're going to do it out over the water, out over the ocean. Okay, let's walk through some of the official statements. So the crew of the EA-18G Growler, they're in good condition after the aircraft crashed during an attempted landing. So yeah, they're coming in to land at Naval Air Station North Island. At approximately 10:15, the U.S. Navy EA-18G Growler, it was assigned to Electronic Attack Squadron VAQ-135. It crashed while landing. That was a statement from Naval Air Forces. 2 aircrew ejected into the San Diego Bay were quickly recovered before being transported to a local hospital for assessment. They were kept for 24 hours. The aircraft remains submerged, and response teams are actively assessing the scene. That's the official statement that the Navy gave on the day of the crash. Harbor security boats are on site securing the area, obviously making sure no one's going to mess with it. That's going to be a hard one to mess with, being at the bottom of the San Diego Bay. And it sounds like they're doing everything they can to minimize the spread of fuel and debris from the crash site. They've got environmental and safety teams working around the clock to mitigate any type of impacts. There's no reports of civilian injuries or injuries at this time to the pilots, which is huge. The aircraft itself was assigned to Air Naval Station Whidbey Island, and it was in San Diego for an exercise. So it wasn't assigned to the air wing that was doing the exercise at the time on the Nimitz Carrier Strike Group. They wanted to make that clear. And now let's talk about this beast, the EA-18G Growler. Just a quick summary of the jet that went into the San Diego Bay. I mean, super beautiful jet in my opinion. The EA-18G Growler is actually one of the aircraft where you can go and do an exchange tour into. So you'd be flying the F-15E. A lot of Wizzos do this, pilots do this as well, then they'll go fly the EA-18G Growler at Whidbey Island. I mean, the thing is decked out to the teeth. It's an electronic warfare platform. So it disrupts, deceives, and denies a large band of electronic signals, and it basically puts other aircraft in a position where they're safer from enemy fighters, ground radars, anything that's trying to paint and target them. The EA-18G Growler goes in and spoofs whatever it needs to distract and disrupt the enemy's electronic signals. That's its bread and butter. They perform a variety of defense tasks, and its bread and butter is to increase situational awareness for friendly forces. And it's also worth noting the EA-18G Growler, it is loaded out with AIM-9Xs and AIM-120s. I love that about the Navy. I love what they do with their F-18s, whether it's a tanker F-18 or an EA-18G Growler doing electronic warfare. They still deck them out with the big sticks, the AIM-120s, the AIM-9Xs, because at the end of the day, any jet up there in the battle space could at any point in time be tasked to lay down some hate. So the fact that they are decked out like that, super cool. I mean, if you look at the jet itself, just a beautiful aircraft. Those twin tails of the Hornet, those slanted twin tails, and then you've got all the electronic attack pods on this thing. Just a good looking jet. So tip of the hat to the EA-18G for getting those aviators out safely. There'll be a full investigation on what actually happened. But at the end of the day, this jet, super capable. I have not lost any of my confidence in the Growlers, as I'm sure the Navy hasn't either. Likely a one-off incident would be my assumption. There's actually an F-15E crash that happened. It was in the Abu Dhabi region during an exercise where one of the engines had a malfunction, and that basically, to summarize it, the drive shaft of one of the engines kind of shot into the other engine compartment and then destroyed the drive shaft, if you will, the simplified terms of the other engine, making it a very expensive glider without an EPU, without that emergency power unit. And then that thing plunged into the ocean as well. But the ejection seats got both of those aviators out safely as well. So at the end of the day, all is well that ends well. No one got hurt on the ground, and both aviators survived. So tip of the hat to everybody involved. And thanks so much for watching the video, guys. If you enjoyed it, Please subscribe to the channel. Turns out only 20% of you are subscribed to the channel with millions of views on the channel. It would really help me if you all would subscribe. It would grow the channel exponentially, and I would just greatly appreciate it. It would just help me do more videos like this. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you on the next video.